Since my first trip to Portugal back in 2010, I've been a huge fan of Super Bock. I think everyone who watches this channel knows how much I like Super Bock. I always say I rock with the Bock, and Super Bock even affects my sense of fashion. And it is quite a sense of fashion. I mean, take a look at this. All this did not happen overnight. And Super Bock is also the most popular beer in Portugal. Twice in my life, in 2010 and 2019, I've done side-by-side taste tests. Super Bock versus Sagres. Both times Super Bock won. And I've always said there's nothing wrong with Sagres. It's not a bad beer. But Super Bock is head and shoulders above Sagres. That being said, it's been 6 years now since I've done a side-by-side taste test. And as time passes, things always change. If it's not a matter of your taste buds, it's a matter of the most popular and successful brand possibly tinkering with the recipe to cut costs, saying, well, hey, we're already number one. Are people really going to notice? And who knows? Maybe they're right. Maybe a lot of these people won't notice. And the brand that wants to be the new king will say, hey, let's try to make things better. Let's see if we can take things over. Let's see how much brand loyalty actually exists. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do a taste test. Super Bock versus Sagres, Part 3. My name is Howie. This is Positively Portugal. Let's get into it. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, Howie, you've been in Portugal now for more than 3 months. Haven't you found any other brand of Portuguese beer aside from Super Bock and Sagres? Well, yes, I have. I've actually found 4 other beers, 4 other beer brands. There's Coral, Sergal, Cristal, and Tagus. We're going to start with Coral. This is allegedly the 3rd most popular Portuguese brand behind Super Bock and Sagres, but it's only sold in 1 store in Guimarães, and I can't even remember what store it was. That's how non-prominent Coral, the 3rd most popular beer in Portugal, is. Now, Coral is from Madeira. Obviously, I am nowhere near Madeira, being in northern Portugal. But I can't remember what store it's in. Now, today I was already in Bolama and Pingo, and I didn't see it, so it's not them. It's either only sold at Continente, Froese, or Mercadona. And I am going to try to find this today, but if I can't, then the taste test is simply going to be Super Bock versus Sagres. Now, the other brands, Sergal, Cristal, and Tagus, I've had all 3 of them. And I'm going to tell you they suck. Like, there is no reason for me to drink this on camera, and there's no reason for me to drink it at all. The only thing that they have going for them are that they're all cheaper than Super Bock and Sagres. But like anything in life, you get what you pay for. I have never seen anyone buying Cristal or Tagus other than myself, the times that I did that just to try it. And it took more than 3 months, but this morning actually was the first time that I saw anybody buying Sergal in Pingo. And to me, if you're drinking those beers with how cheap Super Bock and Sagres are, you might have an alcohol problem. There just isn't a reason to drink it. And to me, Sergal, Cristal, and Tagus all taste the same. It is considerably cheaper, like almost a little more than half the price of, say, a Super Bock. And in fact, at Froese, The Galician supermarket chain, where we have one in Guimarães, you can get a liter of that, and I've seen it for as little as 99 cents, like not even a full euro for a liter of that. Now, you try to sit down and drink a liter of Tagus and tell me how you feel afterwards, because you ain't going to be too happy. So I'm about to go out again. I'm going to go to Froe's Mercadona, and, well, God forbid I have to go to Continente on a Saturday inside the mall. I'm not going to be happy if I have to do that. But I'm going to try, and we'll be back here later, and you'll be a little surprised as to what I come up with. All right, so I'm going to shoot part of this video on location. I'm walking back home from Guimarães shopping, where Continente is. And I wasn't planning to go there first, but when I got outside, it was raining. And if you know anything about the streets of Guimarães, you know that getting to the mall here, Guimarães shopping, there's less cobblestone streets, so less of a chance of slipping and breaking your neck. The streets are pretty well paved going to Guimarães shopping. I actually found Coral, and I didn't think that Continente was the place to find it, but I found it. I found some other cool stuff. When I get home, I'm gonna throw some beers in the freezer, wait about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and we're gonna do an actual side-by-side comparison. Super Bock versus Sagres versus Coral. Now, even better, I caught the on sale of the Conference League game between Vitoria and Real Betis of Spain. And for the socios, the tickets are only going for €5. 5, which is crazy, because when Real Madrid visits New York and plays a game at MetLife Stadium in the Meadowlands there, you could easily pay about $400 for a meaningless friendly. Here, this game in the Conference League depends on who makes the quarterfinals. Yeah, it's going to be a battle of who gets into the Elite Eight. And I paid €5 for that. That's amazing. So, as much as I hate going to malls, as much as I hate shopping, I don't like going to Continente on the weekend. I mean, wow, what a score. €5. I am just beside myself. I'm also exhausted, by the way, because I got to tell you, going to 4 stores in one day, Bolama, Pingo, Continente, and the Vitoria store, 4 stores in one day, is a lot of work for a middle-aged heterosexual man. That's not something that we do. So, hope you get to see how cool the back alleys here are. Taking the shortcut home. And really looking forward to drinking some beer in a little while. I'll see you then. So the beers are now cold, and the taste testing will begin. We are going to start with the wild card here. That would be Coral. I'm going to show you this bottle. Coral, the 3rd most popular beer company in Portugal. And I actually have tried it. I tried it in the United States, and I didn't like it. But that's okay, because as I learned with Super Bock, it probably tastes nothing like the way it tastes here. And I'm curious, it's in a bottle. I remember getting Coral in a can. I found it in one of these Portuguese specialty stores called Sagres in Florida. And Sagres was pretty cool. The first couple of times I went there, they had Super Bock, and then for some reason they stopped selling Super Bock. And you cannot call yourself a Portuguese store. I don't care what country you're in. You're not a Portuguese store if you're not selling Super Bock. And again, I don't even care if it's a fake Super Bock like what we got in the United States. You got to have Super Bock, or you just don't have the right to call yourself a Portuguese store. You're just some international store, and I would say that now Seabra is more of a Brazilian store than a Portuguese store. So I'm going to put this phone down here. The way I work my production is I'm just holding an iPhone while I'm talking, and I can't really open this bottle while I'm holding the phone. So I'm going to put this phone down. Please excuse the darkness or the all white that you might see. It's an odd time of the day where it could be either or. The sun is going to be setting in like an hour or so. So let me open this up and I'll tell you what I think of Corral. All right, well, it turns out that I didn't need to put the phone down. I forgot that I use iMovie and I could just splice together various segments. So here we go. Let me try this and we'll see if maybe Corral will pull off an upset. Well, this is a lot better than how it tasted in the United States. And now I'm going to say something pretty bold. If you live in the United States, please do not buy Portuguese beer if you find it. It's completely different. This doesn't taste anything like it tastes in the United States. And I know I say that about Super Bock whenever I talk about it, but I can't stress it enough. I'm actually telling you now, if you find either Super Bock, Sagres, or Corral in the United States, please do not buy it. It's not a nostalgic thing. I mean, you want it to be, but it's not. It's a totally separate beer, and they shouldn't even be using the names. I don't understand what gets lost in translation. If there's part of the brewing process that's legal in one country that isn't another, and it actually is another beer. But all I can tell you is if you find a Portuguese beer in the United States, you're not getting the beer that the Portuguese people are drinking. And this is pretty good. I wouldn't say that this is on par with Super Bock, but before I make that decision, each beer I'm going to go through entirely, from first sip to the last. Because I've drank too many beers in my life where it'll taste all right in the first sip, and then as it gets a little warmer, it's not so good. So we're not going to be doing this on a first sip basis. These beers are getting drank. And at the end of this video, you're going to know who the true king of Portugal is. Next up will be Sagres. I must admit, I'm surprised that Corral kept its taste from first sip all the way down to the end. It was actually much better than I thought it was going to be. Will it be enough to dethrone the champ? I can't say that. I don't know yet. Everything is going to be treated equally, and I know you might be asking yourself, can I really be objective? Here I am, I'm wearing a Super Bock t-shirt, and I've professed my love for Super Bock on many occasions throughout the history of this channel. Yeah, I can be fair. You know, take football, for example. I'm a Vitória socio, a season ticket holder. I support Vitória, but I have taken them to task many times for quitting on games, for quitting on a huge chunk of the season. So I don't look at things through, what do they call it, rose-tinted lenses. No, I'll be fair about it. So next up is going to be Sagres. And I actually have not had any Sagres since I moved here. Because, again, I just keep thinking to myself, well, why have Sagres if you can have Super Bock? So today, there's an actual reason to drink Sagres, and that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. And even better, I took the lid off of this, the bottle cap off this before I started shooting. So, one thing I want to say about Corral also that I forgot, 5.1% alcohol, Sagres is 5%, and Super Bock is 5.2. I am of the belief that once a beer passes 6% alcohol, that's when the taste goes downhill. So whether a beer is 5, 5.1, or 5.2, it really shouldn't make any kind of a difference. So here we go with Sagres. It's a solid beer. It's pretty much what I remembered it 6 years ago, the last time I drank it. It's solid. And again, I've never bashed Sagres. If this was a Spanish beer, they'd be the king of Spain. Because Spanish beers are awful for the most part. I know people in Madrid think that Mao is good. It's not. People in Barcelona think Estrella Damm is good. It's awful. And people in Andalusia, specifically Sevilla, drink Cruz Campo, which is one of the most vile, nauseating liquids. Now, it doesn't even have to be beer. It does not have to be a beer. It is a vile, nauseating liquid that I do not believe is fit for human consumption. That's actually, I think I can say that's the reason, or it would be one of the reasons why I would never consider living in Andalusia. I cannot subject myself to a place where the most commonly drank beer is Cruz Campo. And Europe is a little different. You can go to a bar in the United States and get like many different beer brand options. Here, I think I have only seen one bar that has both Super Bock and Sagres. And it was Super Bock on draft, Sagres in cans and bottles. I don't believe I've ever seen both Super Bock and Sagres on draft at any bar in Portugal. And they do that in Spain as well. I've never been to a bar where you can get Mal, Estrella Damm, Estrella Galicia, Cruz Campo. Not that you should ever drink Cruz Campo. Remember one thing. Friends don't let friends drink Cruz Campo. And if not for Kronenbourg 1664, Cruz Campo might be the worst beer I've drank in Europe. I can't decide if Kronenbourg is worse than Cruz Campo or Cruz Campo is worse than Kronenbourg, but you should never drink either of those beers. Yeah, Sagres is holding up. It's a solid beer. Now, I don't want to trash Spanish beers. Well, most of them I do. San Miguel, another awful beer. But there are a couple I like. I like Alhambra. And I like Estrella Levante. Now, Alhambra is from Granada, hence the name Alhambra. Estrella Levante is an Estrella beer, which you would never think would be any good because it's Estrella. But you can really only find this in the Murcia and Valencia regions of Spain. It's really hard to find it in other parts of the country. And it's not a political thing like it is with Moritz, for example. Moritz is a beer from Barcelona or maybe somewhere else in Catalonia, and they actually won't sell it in Madrid because of their political pissing contest that they have going on. And I remember when I was in Barcelona, I liked Moritz. When I found it in the United States, I didn't like it so much anymore. I guess that really shouldn't surprise me because I kind of knew about that. Take Heineken, for example. I think Heineken is the worst beer you could drink in America. I think it tastes worse than Budweiser. Here, it's not so bad. I remember when I went to Amsterdam in 2006, and I was surprised by not liking Heineken, but I was surprised that I didn't want to throw up. So again, I don't know what's going on with the brewing processes in either country, why there are such wild discrepancies. Because it's not even a matter of like, oh, well, this tastes different. And you think, well, maybe it's a little similar. It's not. Whether that be Super Bock, Corral, Moritz, Heineken, it just doesn't matter. It's just not translating once it gets to the United States. I don't know what's going on with it. But we're going to finish off this Sagres, and we're going to return with Super Bock. Well, I have to say that Sagres tastes better than I remembered it. And I guess the United States is not the only country that has beers that change recipes. But I was really pleasantly surprised by Sagres. I was not expecting a beer that I would like that much. The question is it enough to dethrone the champion? And when I say champion, it is now time for the champion to defend its crown. This beer needs no introduction. It is the reigning and defending champion of Portuguese beers, the king of Portuguese beers. It's Super Bock. So, we had Corral, we had Sagres. Here comes Super Bock. Yeah. I'm not going to pass any judgment until I get to the end of this, but I kind of have a feeling how this is going to go. See, Super Bock just has this distinct flavor that it feels like home. It has such a familiar taste with every bottle. It's just something that I never get sick of. And I'm not saying it's the best beer in the world. Obviously, this is still a mass-produced, everyday drinking beer. But there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think 90% or more of craft beers are terrible. They all taste like IPAs. These are beers that could be labeled lagers, they could be labeled ales, they could be labeled anything you want. Most craft beers taste like IPAs. And IPAs taste like crap. I mean, hops are necessary in a beer. I do not like these 100% malt beers. I've seen a few of those here. I've tried them back in the United States. It doesn't work. I will freely admit that a beer has to have hops in it. But it shouldn't have any more hops than what's required, than what's in an ale or a lager. And the IPA, it goes too heavy on the hops, too heavy on the alcohol. If it's a summer day, I mean, you have 2 beers and you're done. You just don't want to deal with it anymore. So there's nothing wrong with being a mass-produced everyday drinking beer. I mean, maybe if it's American, there's plenty wrong with it. I mean, there's nothing good about Budweiser, Miller, or Coors, whether we're talking regular or light. All six of those beers suck. Actually, there's more than six because Miller has like three regular versions. No, excuse me, I'm thinking Coors Banquet. I was going to say Miller Banquet. Miller has two regular versions. There's Miller Genuine Draft and Miller High Life. It's a matter of preference. When I was younger and very inexperienced in beer drinking, I was kind of into MGD, the Miller Genuine Draft. But, as I matured, I don't like anything that they make. The Super Bock, it just holds up. First sip when it's ice cold, all the way down to the very end. And I'm not done with this beer. There's still more than half of it left. But look, I've drank plenty of Super Bock in my time here. I know what I'm getting into at the very end. It's going to be just as good as the first sip. And that's a credit also to Corral and to Sagres because they held up. They kept their taste. Nothing deviated with the temperature. There's too much of that in the United States. Way too much. And maybe that's just something where the United States is too hop heavy in their beers, or maybe it's just not natural. There's some artificial elements in these beers, but it's not like that in Portugal. All three of these beers hold up. The tastes don't change. Corral, decent beer, nothing wrong with it, but just nothing spectacular about it either. Kind of average, maybe a little above average. I'm willing to give Corral a 6. I'm very curious as to what it tastes like on draft, but I know I'm not going to get that opportunity unless I'm in Madeira. Now, I don't see myself going to Madeira anytime soon, but I am very curious as to what Corral on draft tastes like. So I'm giving Corral a 6. Sagres, I think it's gotten better. I think they've done something with the recipe. It's better than I remember it 6 years ago. I was very impressed. And if I was in Lisbon, where Sagres is, I guess, more prominent, more dominant, you find it more often than Super Bock, just because Sagres is from the Lisbon area. As a whole, the country of Portugal is very Super Bock heavy. There's only a few places in Guimarães, a few bars where you can find Sagres. And I don't really know how well those bars do. This is a Super Bock country. And after 15 years of drinking Portuguese beer, that's not changing. And that's just my sample size. There are people who obviously have lived in Portugal their whole lives. Maybe they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, older. Super Bock has always been the be-all, end-all of Portuguese beers. But Sagres, again, better than I remember. I think they've gotten better. They've improved. I'm going to give Sagres a 6.75. It's a respectable score for an everyday drinking beer. But Super Bock, it's just a special beer. It's my all-time favorite mass-produced everyday drinking beer. Not even close. It's just got such a nice taste to it for something that's not considered a craft beer. Not that I think craft beers are worth anything, but I've had some great craft beers. I've had craft beers in the United States that I've rated a perfect 10. And by the way, that's one of the things that I'm most proud about of being American. I remember when I first started drinking beer in the late 90s, the early 2000s. American beer was laughed at. It's terrible. You couldn't find anything good, really. But as time changed, as time passed, and times have changed, I should say, American beer is extremely respectable. There are great American beers out there. Don't kid yourselves. Whether they're mass-produced like Sam Adams, I think Sam Adams Cold Snap, their answer to white ale, the Belgian white ale, is incredible. Oktoberfest, they keep changing the recipe every year, and it's just maddening. That used to be my favorite beer, Sam Adams Oktoberfest, but it's now very inconsistent. Some years it's good, some years not so much, but overall, very good American beer. Now, obviously, there are beers that we're ashamed of, the whole Budweiser or Miller and Coors. But the United States has become a beer country. I have no reservations in saying that, and I'm very proud of that. But what we don't have is Portuguese Super Bock, which I am giving an 8. So Super Bock is still, head and shoulders, the king of Portuguese beers. Nothing has changed. But I do want to say that Sagres and Corral are both very nice beers. But very nice, that in 59 cents will get you a bottle of Super Bock at Bolnama. So congratulations to Super Bock. I will continue to rock with the Bock. They are still the best beer in Portugal. And if you want more videos about Portugal, moving to Portugal, the process of getting there, and Portuguese football, please like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. These are the best things you can do to help a content creator on YouTube. I want to thank you all for watching, and once again, rock with the Bock.